Hey everyone, what is the good word? So, in this podcast, we'll be talking about all things social media with Dani Hamlet, who is a social media manager. And she is an entrepreneur who started a business a few years ago and made a big change and dove into the social media community. So, she's got quite a story to tell. She talks about some of the challenges with imposter syndrome and charging the right amount, as well as providing some tips about how to use social media today. So, good things in store. Enjoy the conversation. Dani Hamlet, ladies and gentlemen.
Are you looking to improve your sales skills without compromising your values? Welcome to Sales Made Easy, a podcast for business and personal growth. Join Harry Spate, author of Selling with Dignity, your formula for life-changing sales results, as he hosts sales experts and business owners who share their journeys of personal growth and business success without resorting to pushy sales tactics. Now, here's your host, Harry.
Welcome, Dani, to the Sales Made Easy podcast. What is the good word?
What is a good word? Well, thank you so much for having me on. This is awesome. What is the good word? I would say just learning how to really embrace people as people online is a big thing for me as a social media manager and what that looks like.
All right. Well, so you have a bit of a background in managing social media. I want to be better at social media. I mean, I've been playing around with it for a few years now, and I continue to work on it. But you brought up something about treating people like people on social media. What are some people doing that make you want to say that? So that's interesting.
Yes. Well, I used to use this analogy kind of, and I had to switch it up that when someone comes into your home, how do you treat them? But then I thought about it more in social media. It's not your home. Let's have some boundaries here, right? We're not like showcasing our entire personal life in social media. So let's use the example of you're in your office, someone comes along, a new connection, somebody, you don't know, and, they just want to make a connection with you. How does that go? Now, many of us will receive like a new follower, a new connection, and it's kind of like just a silent entrance into your world. But how do we follow up? How do we treat them like, thank you? Like, hey, what are you about? Who are you? And really actually get to know the people that are choosing to follow us, connect with us online. And, don't have this like, there's the big people with the big followers, and there's the small people over here. Treat people just like people that matter to you. And I think really picturing how do we engage people in real life, and then how can we make that similar experience online is something that I challenge people with.
Yeah, that sounds like a good challenge. So just thinking about the people, for instance, there's followers on LinkedIn, people that will follow, and there are people that will ask for a connection. So I'm very hesitant these days when someone asks to connect. I make it real easy to follow me. I do say connect and follow, but
Mhm.
I've learned that anyone who wants to connect these days pretty much seems to think that I am top of funnel. I'm the ideal candidate for their product, and they want to pitch me right off the bat. So what's wrong with that picture, first of all? Maybe I'm doing something wrong.
Well, I don't know if that means you're doing anything wrong per se, because as your presence grows online, people are going to really be like, oh, look at them, right? So it does. I mean, if you're not getting any of those pitches, it could, it's not like a bad sign per se, but it just means that you're being noticed for what you do, and probably on someone's ideal client list, right?
Mhm.
And I know you work in the sales, and you probably can spot it right away, right? There's that connection. You can just read the lingo in there. And I think that you need to be discerning with who you connect with. I mean, if it's just not a good match, it's not a good match. And obviously you can pass it along with dignity. But I think it's a good reminder for people who are even like listening and just trying to build their network and connect with new people to grow their business online, to first build a relationship before you try to start selling. It's really important, and we can really tell right away. So Yeah, I don't know if there's a big solution for that. I think the more your business grows, I'm pretty sure the more you'll get that. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so I'm just trying to think now as to how this would be. Like, say I have about 5,000 people in my network, probably on a LinkedIn network, and probably know about 500. I don't know what the number is, but it's not a huge number. So suppose I was at an event where there are 5,000 people and people came up to me out of the blue and said, I do this. Would you like to schedule a one-on-one?
right.
There's not enough time in the day to really do that, in
Hmm.
my opinion, because we all have, like, we have to generate revenue. We have to, do what we do. We
Right.
cannot just meet people because that could become a massive waste of time if they don't fit into the range or the type of person that is best for our business. I don't want that
Mhm.
to sound undignified, but there's just not enough time in the day to meet with everybody. So people who are running a
Right.
business have to be fairly selective and say, is this a potential partner? Is it a referral partner? Is it a business partner? Is it a candidate for my product or services? Those are kinds of things that are going through my mind.
Hmm.
Um, but so when I'm looking at someone that just reaches out to me and says, let's connect, I really admire your post or something, I like your profile, let's connect. And then boom, it's let's meet. And I
Right.
feel that even at that point, it's no, you don't know me enough. I don't know you enough. And I'm just going to see if you show up on any of my posts and show
Hmm.
that you actually care about what I'm doing. That's
Hmm.
kind of what my benchmark is. And if people show up there, then I'm much more inclined to think that they are a giver and a potential partner in one form or another. What's your thought on that?
That is so true. I agree because it's kind of that context if you're a network gathering and if someone out of the blue literally just showed up and just said, "Hey, let's meet up." You're right. That would not be conducive. And we only have so many hours in our day to put towards
Mhm.
that. And so I think that a lot of times that we can kind of forget that we have so many opportunities, like you said, to actually engage in each other's post and get to know each other in a fairly organic and natural way. And so like focusing on not just like connecting with people and treating people like people, but like engaging other people's content and doing thoughtful engagement, not just some thumbs up or quick sentence that doesn't really mean anything, but post your own content that shows what you're about, but also engage in other people's content to build some kind of know like trust factor.
Mhm.
Because that the cold, it's like cold emailing, cold DMing is just not necessarily a effective method, I would say. So yeah, that is so true.
Yeah, I really like this, because you mentioned, like, excuse me, we'll have to edit that part out.
Right.
Ugh.
Yes.
All right, so I'm going to say a few times because that way the script will find my ums. I don't know if they
Yes.
find coughs, but they'll find my ums. All
Yes.
right, you choked me up. All right, so all right, so the idea of commenting on a post, like, so if I wanted to get to know you and I look at you and I said, well, she's a prospect, she could buy my services. She's really nice, she likes people. I can tell she runs a nice business, and I'm going to reach out to her, and I'm not going to pitch. I'm just going to just show my support and provide value for her on social media. So what are some ways that you suggest a person might provide value or add value
Mm.
to someone they're quote unquote targeting on social media?
Oh, that's such a good point. So there's many ways. Obviously, you want to keep it pretty balanced. So I'm assuming no one here listening is going to just, like everything on their feed or
Mm,
go crazy here, but if they post something that you resonate with, obviously like there's just giving value, especially LinkedIn. I mean, if you comment, you can even like repost someone. If you engage in the content, that really does help the algorithm bump their post up. So even just engaging is a sense of giving value. I also love to view networking more of a collaborative experience before a sale. So,
Mm.
is there any way to collaborate with each other before you start, pitching or anything like that? But these podcast interviews is a great example of collaborating. We're making content together, but maybe you don't have a podcast. That's okay. Maybe you have a blog or just something that you can do some form of collaboration and get a little creative with it. Some people host online summits, invite them to be speakers. There's just so many ways that if you think of more collaborating, giving, and networking before selling and all of that good stuff, that is great. I think you're going to find that your network is growing in a way that is organic and natural, and you have just such a great tribe around you. So, yeah, those are kind of
Yeah,
my tips.
it's great stuff. So let's talk about the collaboration. So I definitely see the collaboration in podcasting. I think that is such a huge opportunity for small businesses to grow, meet their ideal avatar and ask them to come on, or in reverse, ask them to come on your podcast and then meet them and find out what's going on in the world and developing some relationship over time there. It's not like you
Mhm.
have to immediately go into a pitch, but if you're having a conversation, you could easily say, Danny, I noticed something you said the other day or earlier in the podcast. Would we be able to have a one-on-one? Because I have a couple of ideas that I'd like to share with you, and just continue the relationship that way. You don't have to ask for a business at that point. You're just trying to
Yes.
provide value and do this over time where the person looks at you as, hey, I think I can trust this guy. He's not just trying to sell me on something. And what people think, if you're selling and you're selling that quickly, we have a tendency to think that we're going to be one and done, that
Right.
you're going to get the sale, not provide tons of value, and then move on, right? Because
Mhm.
there's no groundwork being laid. And so it kind of shows that you're short-sighted, you want the sale, and then you move on. And if you do it the long way, which is build some trust, provide value over time, then eventually you can ask for the business, and the person's going to say, wow, this person has put so much into this already. It's a lot easier to trust someone at that point. What's your thought on that?
It is true. It is so true. It makes you think of, content. It's basically content marketing in a way, right? It's also how you engage with them as people, like we touched already. But with the kind of content that you're putting out can also provide that value. You could have a lead magnet that's actually really helpful. You could create posts with some really helpful tidbits. Another thing too is I think a lot of people think, I don't have a live that I do every week. I don't have a podcast I do every week or every 2 weeks. I don't have a blog that I write. It's just kind of me doing the work. And what kind of collaboration can I do with people? Well, I think that we sometimes forget that collaboration can also come from sharing our networks. So
Mm.
that if you become somebody that, you're making those little connection, like, hey, like connecting you with somebody that would be a good fit for you, who is a warm lead, referrals, we had to kind of, know each other fairly well to be able to do that. But, we all have something to give. And if we think with that giving aspect first and approach social media in that way, it's not just sale, sale, sale. It's also giving value and sharing your network. And you might not think it's a big network, but everybody has somebody. So
Mhm.
it's just something to think about.
Yeah. In fact, I was thinking about the size. It's really, I mean, you can look at the size of some people's networks. They know a fraction. It's not even possible to know that many people in life. So
Yes.
there's guidance out there that say something like get a tribe of 1,000, right? Get people
Mhm.
in that group of 1,000 that can buy from you. Not all 1,000 are going to buy from you, but they become like people that are your fans, and a lot of them or some of them may buy from you.
Mhm.
So it just kind of shows you, to put it in perspective, or right, to have the proper perspective about what the size of the tribe that you're trying to build.
Right.
Thoughts?
Yes, yes, big numbers don't, those big followings. Yes, yes, we want numbers. We want to get our marketing out to a bunch of people, but you can do a lot with a small following. Like you said,
Mm,
with that tribe, you can actually know the people that
right.
are following you or who are engaging with your content. If the key is that your audience kind of needs to be your ideal audience,
Hmm.
right? So like if I have someone with an email list, and I help with the regular emails marketing that people send out. If the email list is just not their ideal client, like
Hmm.
anything they sell, anything they say, maybe it was like people they got years ago and their business kind of shifted and their offerings changed, those numbers are going to mean very little. But if I have someone who has like a couple hundred people, but they are like engaged, ideal audience, we could do a lot with that. And so I think that oftentimes the vanity numbers, they're called vanity metrics, right, of social
Hmm.
media, it can be a bit distracting. And we think we just got to go viral and it would be great. Well, depends on who the people you attracted, because you could attract a lot of people who don't want to buy anything you have.
Right. Exactly.
So there's strategy behind it, but I think you can do a lot with a small audience and don't sweat those numbers quite as much. So
Yeah. Well, it's super helpful. Hello, it's Harry. Thank you so much for listening. If you're enjoying this show, would you please take a moment to leave a review and maybe even share it with your friends? That way, more people can find us, and we certainly appreciate that. Now, back to the show. Let's talk about you and your background a little bit. You're running a business these days. Is
mhm.
this Have you been someone who has been a solo or entrepreneur your entire adult life, or did you leave the corporate world, or what's your story?
Oh, it's good. So my story is interesting. I actually have always worked as an independent contractor since after college. And a part of it is because I became a mother a year after I graduated. And
Wow.
so, yeah, so I just was always like, okay, what can I do from home? So I taught English online for 3 years. I did VIP Kid for 3 years. And then I switched to doing the independent contractor life through serving online business owners.
Mm.
So it was first through virtual assistants, and then I landed on the social media marketing because it kind of encapsulates the writing and the copywriting. And I studied art for about 2 years as an undergrad, and so it kind of captures that design element as well.
Mm.
So yeah, I always say that you have the organization and the planning of a teacher, you
Hmm.
have the eye of an art major, and you have the writing of an English major. And so
Wow.
I found my place.
Who knew that it would
Who
be
knew?
social media, right?
I know,
I mean,
right?
this was not that long ago. So what was social media to you when you were first starting out after you had a child and you were, doing the English teaching? What were you thinking about social media at that point?
It was literally just something that I had my own network of family and friends, and I would
Hmm.
share pictures and videos of my kids growing up.
Yeah.
And that was back in the day. Goodness, I think of even just Instagram. It was fairly easy to kind of grow a following compared to now because you kind of just post pictures and keep everything on brand.
Hmm.
And with this whole short form video, it's kind of throwing some people for the loop of like, okay, now what do I got to do? So it was something that I really kind of fell into, but once I did, I really fell in love with the diversity of it all. And you have to love learning to
Mm.
do the social media management. If you like things to stay as they are, this wouldn't be something you should get into because it's always kind of changing and it's a
Oh my
lot more
goodness.
management, I think, than most people will think.
Mm. So yeah, I'm just thinking about algorithms, right? If
Oh,
someone
geez.
were to ask me anything about the algorithms, I'm like, no, I wouldn't be able to help you. I'm just shooting in the dark and hoping I hit the target, but it's some hits, lots of misses. Is that the way it is now? Because it's hard to know.
It is. across the board in all of my, my work groups and people who are in this field, they're saying engagement is lower than it has been, unless you're on TikTok,
Mm,
then you're, give or
yeah.
take. And the best thing that I say is take notice. What is your average performance? Like, what is that average? And take notice of what performed above average. And like kind of analyze, what was that content? Was it shorter? How was the hook? What was the topic?
Mm,
And then just take that and try to do more of that and see if you can kind of bump up that average as you go.
mhm.
Look at, your own what's average for you and try to just do more of what performed more above
Yeah.
average.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's I heard one time that on LinkedIn that your normal views would be about 10% of the number of followers and connections you had.
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm seeing this number drop considerably. It's now probably 5% is what I'm seeing as my normal views. And I don't think the quality of my posts have dropped 50%, but maybe they have. But it's just, and I'm kind of curious if you've seen something like that, or maybe I need some therapy that I'm thinking too much about this.
It can drive you crazy looking at these numbers. And I have sometimes, you do everything, you just keep doing what you're doing, and all of a sudden it's just not working anymore. I'll give you an example. When I first started off, I taught about content repurposing, right? And when you think of content repurposing, the general thing that you think about is like what we're doing now. Say you have this on YouTube, and then you just kind of take a snippet of what I say and make it a video on TikTok or Reel or even LinkedIn, right? You share
Mhm.
the little snippets. Well, the performance of these have gone way down.
Mm,
It's to the point where I could have my client say make a short form video, and they can make it just for Reels on Instagram, which is as an example.
mhm.
And if they make it just for that platform, it does better. But if I take a snippet from a video, it just doesn't perform as well.
Oh,
And so,
yeah.
and I think it has a lot to do with people just swipe by. It could be the quality of the video. A lot of times, if you're taking a chunk out of an interview, it doesn't have a hook per se. It's kind
Mhm.
of like you inserted it into a conversation. The context is kind of missing. And it doesn't wrap up with a nice CTA at the end, like call to action. And so I've been having to really rethink how I have done content repurposing and reshape that because, yeah, things are changing. That isn't working so well anymore.
Right, right. Yeah. Well, I find it interesting. Like, so I've been playing with every video, it has to be in 9 by 16. I have to think through that for a second, right?
Right. Yeah.
And then you're doing something like this on Zoom, and it's like, yeah, this is difficult to put into 9 by 16 because we become about, a quarter of an inch tall, and
We look huge.
lots of black space vertically. And it's just like, this is this even worth doing? So
Mhm.
there's all kinds of challenges that way.
It is.
Um, so yeah, I've even gotten to the point where I say on LinkedIn, I get hardly any views on video. And
Mhm.
so I've just said, maybe video is not the thing for me on LinkedIn. Maybe I'll just put that elsewhere on YouTube, on shorts and Instagram
Mhm.
shorts and Facebook and so forth. But someone said recently, it's like, well, don't give up on LinkedIn with the video because people still see your genuine, authentic self, Harry. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I have to get used to 23 views then.
Right, right. And it does have value to be up there in a way. I've heard some people say it's the people who are quiet that are the most engaged, right? And LinkedIn, I think video is definitely becoming a little more prominent on LinkedIn, but I mean, and I think everything is definitely moving towards that. Like used to be able to be a social media manager and not have video editing skills, and you were okay.
Mm,
At this point, you have to know how to edit video to manage social media. So it's it's an interesting. It's an interesting thing. I've seen some people like, because you're right. When you crop this, like my face would be huge in the frame, right?
Hmm.
Some people will set up their phone on a tripod and kind of
Hmm.
like put it at an angle so it's farther away. And then you're not looking at the camera, but it's capturing you talking into a microphone and engaging like that. And that
Oh,
can add like a different angle
yeah.
and that can do the ticket too. So more work, but
Yeah, exactly. So I have to get a second, I have to use a camera for another angle
yeah,
because I
yeah,
see a lot of that on whatever video platform I may be watching. I see those little side views.
yeah.
Yeah, I follow this stuff all the time. And it's like, do I have to do that? Do I have to get another camera? I
Yes.
should move my location too. Someone said, well, don't just sit behind your desk. You got this little bookcase in the background. But I also heard just like, well, people are going outside. I tried outdoors before. I've got car noise. Uh,
Right. Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Wind blowing into the microphone. That always sounds great.
I know.
What are you on an airplane, Harry?
Right. Right. It is such a process. And I have found that like there's a lot of coaching involved when I'm working with my clients on how to make these videos and how to make it feel authentic and work and connect, but then also not stressing about too many of those details at the same time. It's a balancing act for
What
sure.
about a script? Do you suggest that people have a script and, because I see some of these apps where the script, they can basically watch the script on their phone. They load the script somehow and
Mhm.
then they're kind of reading or at least sticking
Yeah.
with something, looking
Yeah.
into yeah,
Yes.
thoughts?
Yes. So I think yes, because here's the thing that most of these videos short and snappy, 30 seconds, 60 seconds. And so it definitely does take some thought on how to convey what you're trying to convey in a concise manner.
Mm,
How to say that hook. So you first start off with the hook of what would stop someone's scroll? What is the one statement about what you're talking about? Have the words up on the screen somewhere, and then concisely go through your points. And so it tends to require some thinking about it, writing them down. The other thing that a lot of people do, and that I recommend, is record yourself saying sentence per sentence. So this is specifically for like the TikTok, the short form reels. So
okay.
you would grab your phone right here
Hmm.
and you would say your hook. Stop
Yeah.
your recording.
Okay.
And then you would say your next line and do like a different angle. You could just pivot
Oh, cut it out.
and then you say your next line. And you
This
could
is
think
money right here. It's that easy.
it's that easy. And so you,
Oh
you
my
can just stop your
goodness.
recording. You can think, okay, what is the next brilliant thing I can say?
Yeah.
And then change your angle. You can just pick
Yeah.
another and then you do your next one. And then boom, boom, boom. And then what's your CTA? And so then end with your CTA, boom. And you put it all together, try to cut out the gaps.
Yeah.
And you have a video that people are going to keep watching because you're concise and the angles keep changing.
Right. And so those changing angles keep people's attention, right? It's because
Yes.
we need our eyes need some little something
Mhm.
exciting to watch other than watching something for 30 seconds is not enough anymore. We
It
need like
isn't.
8-second intervals.
It is so true. Our brains are like completely
Oh,
programmed for this. And you could just
yeah.
swivel in your office and then you're good to go.
I
So
so love it. Such great advice. So I'm going to ask another question and give away all your trade secrets here. But should people transition in those videos or can they just be like stop and start, as they're putting them together? Because like, if
oh,
it's you following, so like if it's me, my face is like this, I stop and then I start with another face, like because I spliced it in there. Is that
you
bad
don't
or what's your thought?
yeah, you don't need to do that. I mean, you
Okay.
you could, some people do like like a little blending
Yeah,
transition,
yeah, exactly.
but the style, and this is because of TikTok. TikTok really
Mhm.
started this whole new style
Okay.
of the trick is don't have a gap. So
Okay.
like finish your sentence and don't have like a moment you're just like, and then you say something. So
Just
like
my
cut
normal look in the camera, you mean?
right. Yeah, you don't smile for even
Don't
a
do
second.
that. Don't do
Just
what you do, Harry. Don't do that.
right. Yeah.
Thank you. I
You
get what
can't
you're saying.
you can't breathe. You just, just talk. And so you cut out the gaps, but you don't need to do any transitions. It can just be
Okay.
choo, choo, choo. And
Beautiful.
I say keep it simple. We don't have time to make this too complicated.
Okay.
So,
This
yeah.
is great. Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah.
I'm going to go back to, so you were an English teacher,
Mhm.
stay-at-home mom, started your own business. You're going to do a complete change of business, right? I
Yeah.
think teaching English to becoming a social media manager is a pretty big change.
Yeah. Yeah.
What would you say were one or two challenges that faced you that you might have said, you know what, this is a lot harder than I thought?
Okay, good question. So when I first started, I think I struggled so hard. Like, how am I going to find someone to hire me when my network is just this small?
Mm,
Like,
yeah.
I
Because it's
don't
all
know.
friends and family, right? At one
Friends and
point.
family, yeah,
Yeah. With
like they've been
baby
watching my
pictures.
kids grow up and stuff. Like it's just like I don't know how this is going to work. Now, I had to get pretty creative and I had some, ideas I had kind of in the oven, but I think one of the first things that I had to do is just let my little small network know this is what I'm doing. And so it can be kind of intimidating because you sometimes don't feel like you're the professional you want to be yet. But what I found was that my husband's friend took me on and hired me on to do some work. And I I made some connections and I would just go online, I would just comment on people's things and I would just start engaging. And it was really in LinkedIn where I found some amazing people. They all lived in Rochester, New York. And I got into a little network circle and I got to the point where they didn't believe I didn't live there.
Hmm.
Like, how is Danny not in our city? I'm like, I found some really collaborative, amazing people, and they taught me how to network. And yeah, and then one of the biggest things that I did, and the big thing that has actually spurred my podcast is I listened to a ton of podcasts, and I listened to this one podcaster say, if you want to talk more about this, book a call with me. I'm serious. And I actually did. So I took her up on it. We met, and she literally showed like, you need a legit contract. You need business insurance. Like she laid down the law, and I did everything she said, and we built a friendship. And it was through that connection that I got my first big break with a client that has opened up the floodgates to all my other clients.
Nice.
So it was podcasting and just reaching out to people that were opening the invitation. And eventually I found my feet. So
Yeah. That's so amazing. Did you feel, so you said something earlier on in that where you said you didn't use the word inadequate, but where you just felt like you didn't have the experience. What helped push you through that?
oh yes. Oh my goodness. And that is like not a fun feeling to be in
Mm,
because they call it imposter syndrome, right?
mm,
Like you kind of feel like I feel like I have the chops. I know I can learn because I know I can do this, but I need to find somebody who's willing to take on someone who's a little green, right? Who wants to be okay with let's grow together.
mm,
And a lot of it has been I love to learn and I research things like crazy. So I kind of just embrace the everything is figure outable.
I like it.
And I also was just, I'm going to be honest with people I'm talking to. So I'm not going to be like, oh, yes, I totally know how to do that.
Hmm.
I will just say, I want to learn how to do that. Here's what I do know. And then oftentimes, the people who hired me on early on were kind of newer in their business. And I made sure my price point kind of matched a little bit of where my experience was. And I learned a ton. So I think, yeah, you just have to put yourself out there and be honest, but also just know that a lot of things are figure outable
Mm,
and price point yourself accordingly. And then as you gain more experience, don't stay there. Keep learning and growing. So
yeah.
well,
So
that was
did you
kind of
have the challenge of, it's great stuff, by the way. Did you have the challenge of like, where do I price this like everyone else does?
yes.
How did you manage through that?
Well, I think that, and I think someone even say that my price point is probably still too low. I don't even know. I kind of feel like it's
Mm,
arbitrary, but when I first started off, I did what I called my portfolio rate. So that was like when I
Hmm.
first started, and it was like pretty cheap work.
Hmm.
But then, one thing I learned as I went on is that here's the one thing that can happen. You're a service provider, you work hourly. You get faster at what you do because you get better at it and you make less money. So you kind of like as service provider, like do I then take on way more clients than I can handle just because I'm faster to try to make the money that I need to support my family? Or do you begin to say, okay, like I have gained my expertise, so start making some packages here. This is what this package cost, and kind of go from there. So you can kind of find yourself in that situation. And I had to make that switch. I would say 6 months ago, I switched from hourly to packages,
Hmm.
and
Good
it's
for you.
more about the deliverables and then the time. So,
Right. Well, it's like, I've seen so many videos on this great, great stuff. It Where someone's got something broken, they have to call in a mechanic, and he comes in and he finds some little loose wire, turns a screw, and he charges whatever $500 for it. And the person says,
right.
$500 only took you 2 minutes. He says, yeah, but it took me years and years to figure out what that was. Right. So
Mhm.
you're paying for the years and years of experience, or in your case, you're paying for, your skills that you've learned and the fact that you can do it faster. It's
Mhm.
like, and you're going to save someone like me days, right? I mean, not just minutes and hours, folks, days of looking at various video editing, different tools out there, watching YouTube videos, how to use the tool. Then something else pops up in your email, says, try this, or you go to AppSumo, you
Mhm.
see that. It's like, oh my God, the hours and hours and days that I've
Yes.
spent doing stuff that is not my area of expertise. And if someone comes along and says, look, I can do this for X, I don't care what your hourly rate is, because
Yep.
whatever you do is less than me spending days on. Right. And,
Yes.
and my hourly rate at that point is about $1.75 an hour based on doing a video for 30 seconds. Right. It's crazy.
It is so true. It is so true. I have come in and done something and they were just like, how did you do that so fast? Like,
Yeah.
how did you just put that together? And it's like, well, this is just what I do. And I have systems and processes and I know these things in and out. And so, yeah, yeah, it's switching that mindset. And once you make that switch, it's a lot easier.
Yeah. Good for you, Danny. So how can people find more about where they can find you, and what are some of the things you can do for them?
Yeah, yeah. So my website is daniellehamlet.com, but then my social media is Dani with an I, Hamlet. So figure that out as you will. I'm Danielle and Danielle. I'm Danielle and Dani at the same time. And so I am most prevalent on Instagram or LinkedIn. And I also have my Discovery Call podcast, where I basically encourage people to do what I did, reach out to the people that I have on my podcast, continue the conversation. Everyone who comes on my podcast expects coffee chats and discovery calls based off of that conversation. So it's a networking opportunity that's in a different form than what you might think it is. So
Great stuff. So we'll put that in the show notes, and hopefully you'll get some traction here, but you're definitely salt of the earth type person and tons of value. And I am going to now try using video a little bit differently with short 1 sentence clips, blend those together. And I'm telling you, I'm going to get more than 23 views. I swear.
it's good. I'm going to look for this. It's going to be awesome. I'm so excited.
Oh, Danny, it's been a blast. Thanks a lot for joining me on the podcast. Look forward to your continued success and growth. Great
Thank
stuff.
you.
Thank you for listening to Sales Made Easy. If you found value in our conversations, please subscribe and leave a review. Our goal is to provide practical strategies for growing your business while staying true to your values. Remember, success in sales is about serving your clients. Serve first, and the selling will follow. We'll be back soon with more insights and inspiration. Until then, keep serving and providing value to others. Good things will happen.